For those of you present here at Anshe Emet Synagogue, if you have your cell phone with you, please place it in the silent mode or turn it off completely. That would be appreciated. Following the service today, the interment will take place at Rose Hill Cemetery in Chicago, 5738 Ravenswood Drive. There will be a procession lining up facing south on Pine Grove, and then we'll be turning onto Addison Street. There will be funeral stickers to be placed inside your windshield on the passenger side, and some of the vehicles will have a funeral flag affixed to the top of their vehicle. The Shiva will be observed at the Flaum residence. It's 1452 North Wheelan Street in Chicago, immediately following the interment, and the family will be sitting Shiva there today until 6 p.m. And for those of you that might want to put it in Google Maps, Wheeland is spelled W-I-E-L-A-N-D. Again, that's 1452 North Wheeland Street. There is no street parking, but there is parking available on North Avenue, and a memorial service will be held at the Dirksen Federal Building in the spring at a date to be announced later. The memorial contributions the family has requested to the Anshe Emet Synagogue, that information is in your folder, and for those of you viewing online, that information is on our website as well. Following the service, the pallbearers will be coming forward to help escort Judge Flaum's casket from the sanctuary. They're Bruce R. Braun, Gary Feinerman, Eric Fulbright, Lawrence W. Levin, the Honorable Michael Y. Scudder, Paul Schulman, Samuel K. Skinner, the Honorable Amy St. Eve, the Honorable Diane S. Sykes, the Honorable John J. Thorpe Jr., Jane C. Thompson, Thomas M. Tully, Dan Webb, and Robert M. Roble, and as honorary pallbearers, the Honorable William J. Bauer and the Honorable Alana Diamond Rovner. This service will be conducted by Rabbi Michael Siegel, Rabbi Benji Forrester, and Cantor Rachel Brook, all from the Anshe Emet Synagogue. Shortly, I'm going to have everyone rise when the family enters the sanctuary.
Friends, you may be seated.
Shir lamalot esainai el harim me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz al yitein lamot raglecha al yanum shomrecha hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha, al yad yeminecha, yomam hashemesh lo yakeka, ve'areach balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzidcha uvuecha, me'ata ve'ad olam.
A song of ascents. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Adonai will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your protection, a guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm and guard your life. Adonai guards your going and your coming, now and forevermore.
The 23rd Psalm.
Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binot sheyarbitzeini, al menuchot, al menuchot, yenaleini. Nafshi yishover, yishover, yancheini v'maglei tzedek, yancheini v'maglei tzedek, leman shema. Gam ki elech begetz al mavet, lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishatecha hema yenachamuni. Taroch lefanai, lefanai, shulchan neged sarerai, dishanta vashemen roshi, kosi rivaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni, kol yemei chayai, kol yemei chayai. V'shavti beveit Adonai leorech
In the booklets you received, in the inner page, you'll find the English for the 23rd Psalm. I invite you to read responsively with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake.
Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me.
Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. On this day, we find ourselves on the path of King David, walking through the valley of the shadow. We gather to perform a mitzvah, a sacred commandment. It's the commandment of Livia. It is to escort a person, to walk with them on the final journey of their life. And this we do with the very honorable Judge Joel Flaum. And there is not a person in this room, I imagine, who couldn't tell a story about Judge Flaum. And likely that story would also be attached to a thoughtful act, an act of kindness, or as we would say in Yiddish, something that reflected his Menschlichkeit, his humanity. So we are walking with him today, but we also walk with his memory. But it is his family, Judge Flaum's beloved family, that feels both the blessing and the weight of memory most acutely. So on this day, Delilah, we pray for your comfort in these difficult days. And Allie and Paul, we pray for your comfort in these days. John, we pray for your strength at this time and for your comfort. On this day, we remember beloved parents, Louis and Sally. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. On this day, we extend our deepest sympathies to truly beloved grandchildren, to Lionel and to Lucy, to Eli and to Jackson. We remember a beloved sister, Ellen, Zichrona livracha. May her memory be for a blessing. And we extend our deepest sympathies to both Lisa and to Thea. In our tradition, we acknowledge loss by an act of tearing. It is a ritual that goes all the way back to the earliest days of our people in the Bible. And in tearing, we acknowledge that something vital has been taken from us. But our tradition also offers us the wisdom to recite a blessing in this moment as a reminder that Judge Joel Flaum's memory, his life, was that blessing. And that we are to remember that and not allow ourselves even a second when it's not present in our minds. So Delilah and John, Allie, if you please rise. If you would recite these words after me. Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai,
Eloheinu melech haolam.
Eloheinu melech haolam,
Dayan
Dayan
ha'emet.
ha'emet.
Praised are you,
Praised are you,
Lord our God,
Lord our God,
ruler of the universe,
ruler of the universe,
the righteous judge.
the righteous judge.
In the book of Job, we are told the story of a person who suffered in life. And there were those who came to Job and advised him to turn his back on life, to turn away, to acknowledge the darkness and not the light. But Job responded very much like I would imagine the good judge would respond. And he said these words, which I'm going to ask everyone to please repeat after me in his name. Adonai Natan,
Adonai atam,
V'Adonai Lakach,
Adonai lakach,
Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach, Yehi Shem Adonai.
Mevorach.
God has given,
God has given,
God has taken away.
God has taken away.
Praise be the name of the Lord.
Praise be the name of the Lord.
Would you be seated? I want to begin by acknowledging many judges that are in attendance today and those around the country that are watching this service. You honor this man as he honored each of you, as he honored the bench, as he honored the law. I also want to acknowledge the presence of Monsignor Vilo, who represents himself and the Archdiocese on this day. I know how very much it means to the family that you were with us. Last week, we gathered with Judge Joel Flaum to say the Vidui, the final prayers that Jews recite before death. Delilah, John, and Allie had been staying with him, keeping vigil, as it were, in his hospital room in Wisconsin, not far from the home that he and Delilah loved so much. As we gathered around the bed, the scene had a biblical quality to it, reminiscent of a moment when a patriarch offered words of blessing as he passed from this world to the next. In this case, each of those people gathered were the greatest blessings in Judge Flaum's life, along with the grandchildren who had visited him in the past few days. Delilah had been his wife, his life's partner for 35 years. And it should also be mentioned on this day that in this last difficult period of illness, that Delilah was her husband's fiercest advocate. Children, John and Allie, who filled his heart with joy and pride. And grandchildren who had brought him such joy, each represented a unique blessing for the man. But for each one of them, he was the greatest blessing in their lives. Judge Flaum was sedated, but when I spoke to him, his eyes opened wide and he looked at me. He was fully present. He squeezed my hand hard as I held it, making it clear that he was ready to die. There was such a sense of dignity and calm surrounding him. No fear, but a quiet confidence that this was his time. Judge Flaum died as he lived. We said the essential prayer of Jewish faith together. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. His voice was just a whisper. I reminded him of something that Delilah had told me, that when his mother left this world, she repeated that prayer over and over again. A moment later, in a much fuller voice, the judge said the Shema, stronger and louder. Reflecting back on that experience, it occurred to me that in that moment, Judge Joel Flaum was exercising his last act of courage and independence. In that prayer, I believe, he was summoning God to take him. It was his time. And his wish was granted. A few hours later, he died so quietly that it wasn't immediately apparent that the good judge had slipped into the night. Our rabbis have a name for such a gentle death, nishikat mitah, the kiss of death. The idea being that just as God breathed life into the first human, so does the Almighty take the breath of life from a person. Gently, lovingly. They go on to teach that this type of death is always reserved for good and righteous people. While it is not always that way, how appropriate it is that Judge Flaum was taken in such a fashion. As I drove back to Chicago, I found myself reflecting on Psalm 15. I thought to myself, it's almost as if King David was writing about the man before us today. Mizmor LeDavid Adonai mi yagur bo halecha, mi yishkon bahar kodshecha, holech tamim ufoal tzedek v'dover emet b'levavo. God, who may dwell in your tent? Who may reside at your holy mountain? The person who walks with integrity, acts with righteousness, speaks the truth in his heart. One who does not slander with his tongue or do evil to another or bring shame on anyone. One who holds the depraved in contempt, who shows honor to those who are deserving, and who never reneges on an oath, even when it turns out contrary to one's own best interests. Oseh ela lo yimot leolam. Whoever does these things, King David ended, will stand firm forever. This funeral today is a commentary on Psalm 15. Whoever does these things will stand forever. Judge Joel Flaum was the embodiment of these words of the psalmist. And his memory, his example, will live on in the minds of those who loved him and those he loved. His family, his friends, his colleagues, the many lawyers that worked with him, those who argued the law before him, those who clerked with him, those judges who were his esteemed colleagues. Who better than to help us carry his memory forward than Judge Flaum's children, his grandchildren, and the Honorable Judge Robert Michael Dow, Jr., who clerked for Judge Flaum along the way of his own distinguished career, where he now serves as United States District Judge of the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois, and concurrently serves as counselor to Chief Justice John Roberts. John?
Hi, I'm Jonathan Flaum, and Joel Flaum is my dad. If there is a theme to my eulogy, it would be nice guy finishes first. My dad was immensely loved, and he loved immensely in return. Since his passing, I've received many calls, emails, and texts from colleagues and friends expressing their condolences and love for my dad. And my dad's professional accomplishments and contributions to the legal community are important. I'm proud of them. He was an outstanding lawyer, judge, and naval officer. But more important were his qualities of heart, soul, and character. He was smart, kind, generous, humble, and fair to his core. If you needed advice, you asked Judge Flaum. He gave the best advice, be it an ethical, moral, legal, or car issue. My dad had the answer. He was a wonderful mentor to so many. Also, no one could go to their left like my dad. He had moves you might not expect. Underestimate him at your peril. He always was paying attention and expertly reading the room, even if you thought he wasn't. But I want to focus on his life off the bench. As one of his friends stated, he walked with kings, yet kept the common touch. Whether you were the Chief Justice of the United States or a cleaning person in the federal building, my dad treated you with respect and kindness. My dad told me once that of the top 10 qualities a person can possess, 1 through 9 should be nice. My dad was an extremely nice and kind person, but he was not a pushover, unless you were one of his grandkids. And I sometimes think being nice is underrated, but it will get you far. My dad went from a small town boy from a family of limited means to the top of his profession. I also think that kindness is misunderstood. It's not a passive thing that lies motionless in the corner. Sometimes we describe people as kind in a way that sounds a bit weak and pathetic, as if we're describing something listless and without courage or backbone. But kindness, the real thing, is no pushover. Kindness is deliberate and honest, even when it has an uncomfortable impact. Perhaps most overlooked of all is that genuine kindness is at times extremely difficult. When we are criticized or disrespected in the face of conflict, it is easy to send kindness over the side. It takes courage to maintain kindness and to recognize that it is a value, a belief to live by, not a mood that regularly changes. Kindness isn't showy or extroverted, and it's always attractive to others. And it isn't always attractive to others. When it works properly, it is like the heart it comes from, always in the background, never obvious, quietly consistent. That was Joel Flaum. But kindness was not my dad's strategy. It was simply the only way he wanted to lead his life. My dad's kindness made him beautifully connected to so many of you. For the last 50 years or so, many people have told me how much they love my dad, how nice he is, and how he selflessly touched their lives and helped them during important moments. They tell me that they will always love and admire my dad. And this consistent outpouring of love for my dad could have made it easy for me to take it for granted. But I don't. I saw how my dad treated the world and how he gave love to so many. And I was happy to share my dad with the world. And I never felt that I lacked a minute of my dad's love or time for all he gave to others. My dad was a person of great integrity. His integrity was evident from an early age. And I'd like to share a story of teenage Joel that shows who he was early on. He was on his high school track team and very close to achieving the coveted H, to become a Hudson High School letterman. It was the last track meet of the year, and it came down to the last race for Dad to win his H. Hudson High would win the meet regardless of the outcome of this last race, and if Dad finished in the top 3 of this last race, he would become a letterman, something he greatly aspired to achieve. His teammates told my dad, "Hey, Joel, if it's close, we'll let you finish in the top 3 if we're running ahead of you." The race started, and as they approached the finish line, my dad was running neck and neck with a Hudson High teammate in 3rd place. With only a few yards left, his teammate began to slow down to allow my dad to pass him, a kind gesture to be sure. But my dad refused to pass him. He did not want to win his letter that way. Dad finished 4th, no coveted H, no becoming a letterman, but a teenage Joel placed integrity over glory and accolades. He never wavered from doing what was right. My dad felt character is immeasurably important. We should be doing or being good if for no other reason than it is the right thing to do. It's the measure of a person, doing what's right because it's right. Lastly, I want to talk about Grandpa Joel briefly. He showed so much love for my children and my sister's children. Being with grandkids was truly his favorite thing in the world. I'm sure many of you in attendance listened to my dad talk about his grandkids. If you ever went to his grandkids museum, also known as his chambers, there were countless pictures of the grandkids. And while he often felt great physical pain in his 80s, the joy of his grandkids made his life happy. I observed the love he gave my boys, Eli and Jackson, and it was beautiful to see. The boys had a deep connection with Grandpa Joel, which gave us immense happiness when we were all together. We shared a bond that will never be forgotten. My dad did not die in pain and was surrounded by loved ones. He led a remarkable and accomplished life, and he was ready to go in the end. It is, of course, sad that he died, but it's not tragic. He died as he lived, with dignity, doing it his way until the very end. Thank you. Allison.
Good morning. My name is Allie Flaum, and I am Joel Flaum's daughter. Of course, you know that already. But I begin today by telling you that I am Joel Flaum's daughter because I begin every day with that as my North Star. My father was a deeply decent man. He was generous and modest and a great believer in the power of listening. In an era where moderation and compromise have fallen somewhat out of fashion, he was a proud defender of the middle ground, of the place where multiple truths could be held at once, of the place where we each tried, even for just a moment, to understand the other person's point of view. Now, that's not to say that he had no strong beliefs. His ethical code was legendary and was most definitely his own North Star. And he would never compromise on kindness. As many of you know, for the many years when the Bergdorf basement cafeteria was his favorite lunch spot, the 200-foot walk there from the Dirksen building could take as many minutes as he stopped to say a genuine hello to everyone that he encountered. But my father did not and would not live in a world where you could not make time to ask after someone's children. Next on his list of priorities may have been the New York Yankees, but closely following that was a commitment to the promotion of true civility. He made the world a gentler, more thoughtful, more humane place, with every truly attended conversation, every warm handshake, every carefully selected and bestowed nickname. In the same way, Dad steadfastly refused to pick out a most important case or opinion, because he lived by the principle that every case is important to the people impacted by it. One of my favorite stories in this vein, and there are so many, involves a case where Dad and his colleagues had expected to rule from the bench directly after argument in what was a very clear-cut matter. This practice is not at all untoward, but on the day this story takes place, Dad somehow realized that the lawyer who was going to end up on the losing side was a solo practitioner. He was there to argue before the Seventh Circuit for the first and maybe only time. Dad also realized that this lawyer's family had driven up from downstate Illinois to observe this career milestone. Some of you may wonder how in the world he could have detected all of that. But I suspect that most of you will not be surprised at all. And you will also not be surprised that Dad decided there would be no ruling from the bench that day, and that he and his colleagues would send that lawyer home with his family feeling heard and feeling proud, rather than summarily defeated. Now, I have no idea what the legal issues were in that case, though I am certain that Dad and his colleagues handled them with impeccable care. But for Dad, the cases were not just about the law. In fact, for him, the law was not just about the law. It was about people. It was about creating and protecting a system that would make the world more fair and more just. Now, this took some doing. It meant writing opinions when you could have ruled from the bench. It meant never reversing a trial judge's decision without remembering how very difficult those decisions could be, and often taking pains to say exactly that in his opinion. It meant never rushing a nervous lawyer, never shutting down a good faith argument, never turning away from someone seeking counsel or support. But Dad would not have had it any other way. He was a workhorse, to be sure, and he was proud to tell the nurses and the doctors just a week ago that he was still working at 88. But his labors were labors of love. He venerated the law and the people who brought it to life. And he felt honored to count himself among them. So he was a giant, but he never acted like one. He was a leader, but he preferred to serve. He was a beloved mentor, but let me tell you, if you think his clerks loved him, please know that he loved them back 100-fold. He was kind and he was good, and I will miss him every day for the rest of my life. Finally, I want to say that my family and I are so touched that so many of you are here today. But I hope you will let me take a moment to speak to just one of you, my stepmother, Delilah. Delilah, your relationship with my father was a true partnership. You were each other's very best company. And to listen to the two of you break down a legal issue or a moment in political history or the backstory behind an antique that you'd found in Wisconsin, watching the ball ping back and forth like a tennis match, that could be the best ticket in town. You were so well matched. You were so fully aligned. You were so united. And then Dad got sick. And in recent years, especially this past year, while his mind was sharp as ever, his body was increasingly failing. But Delilah, you never failed him. Every day you fought for him, tirelessly and with such great care. And when it was time to let him go, you helped him do that too, with dignity and so much love. You were partners, truly, to the very end. So as my father's daughter, I will finish now with what I think he would want me to tell you, which was that it was his privilege to be a lifelong public servant, to treat each case he ruled on, each life that he touched, with care and with integrity. That was what was honorable about the Honorable Joel M. Flaum. Not the title, not the accolades, but the daily quiet work of safeguarding the traditions and the institutions and the relationships that define and care for and bind us. It is our job now to uphold that legacy. And that's a tall order. But as my husband Paul said to me this weekend, as central and as foundational as my father was to my life. As much as his values are, on my very best days, my own, that also means that he has built me, and I believe he has built all of us, to carry his values forward even without him. My name is Allie Flaum, and I am, and I always will be, Joel Flaum's daughter. Thank you.
John and Allie, thank you for your beautiful words today. You have truly honored your father. It was the judge's wish that his grandchildren would stand on this day as well. So it is our honor to call upon them. Lionel and Lucy, Eli and Jackson, please come forward.
Hello, I'm Eli Flaum. I'm Joel's grandson. Out of everybody here, only 4 people knew him as Grandpa. I was the first to call him that. The connection we shared was special. He was always there for me and supported me in what I chose to do. I fell in love with hockey. And when I started, Grandpa was at every game and every practice. Cheering me on, he was my #1 fan. Every time I was on the ice, I'd look over to the side and see Grandpa, standing as close as he could next to the glass. Grandpa and I shared a lot of things in common, even our taste buds. No matter how fancy the restaurant we went to, we both got a burger and fries. I have so many stories about Grandpa that if you gave me an hour or a day, it would still not be enough time to tell all of the great stories we shared, but I'd like to share a couple. I started visiting Grandpa in his chambers when I was little. Walking into the building with him was a long process. Everyone we passed knew him, and Grandpa knew them as well. While many people viewed his chambers as a serious place, we viewed it as a playground. My brother and I ran around the place and played with action figures and his gavels, among other things. Often, as we were leaving the building, we went across the street to Foot Locker, where Grandpa would buy us a pair of shoes or a sports jersey. I also have fond memories of Grandpa, which involve Halloween. When we were very little, my brother and I once dressed up as Power Rangers. You would not recognize Grandpa as he joined the 2 of us in a matching costume as we went around the corner to Gowdy Park. Another Halloween, he wore the same Captain America costume as me, which was perhaps a more fitting costume for him. Grandpa was the most loving person I ever knew. No one showed more love to me than he did. I wish my grandpa could see me grow up and accomplish things in the future, but I know that he would always support me and be proud of me. My cousins, Lionel and Lucy, wanted me to share something on their behalf. My cousin Lionel and Lucy asked me to share that they admired Grandpa for being dedicated to public service and serving his country. They described Grandpa as always being patient and attentive. Lionel remembers that Grandpa always made you feel like he was listening to what you had to say. Thank you.
Throughout my whole life, I've always lived up to my grandfather. And of his many admirable qualities, I was always inspired by the way he could make anyone his friend. With a warm smile and a kind face, Grandpa was always there for me throughout my whole life. And whether that meant sitting across the table eating chocolate chip pancakes, or being there for me as I talked to him about my plans for the future, Grandpa was always a welcoming ear. Grandpa has always been a great inspiration to me. He worked hard and still cared deeply and tirelessly for every member of his family. And of all the goofy and funny stories I could tell about my grandfather, the one that sticks out the most to me was my first time seeing him on the bench. I took a day off of school to see Grandpa as Judge Flaum for the first time. And Grandy told me that he wasn't the kind to ask too many questions or to interrupt a lawyer, because he always wanted to let a person make their point. Grandpa didn't speak often, but when he did, his words carried a weight and a meaning. And for the first time in my life of knowing Grandpa, I had met Judge Flaum. He was truly an American superhero, a low-income Jewish American boy who worked hard through his life to make the lives of everyone around him better. A man who could work for a whole lifetime and still at age 80 dress up in matching Halloween costumes with me and my brother. Someone who I had all the love and respect for in the world for, and someone whose memory I will forever hold near to my heart. Thank you.
Somewhere in the universe, there is a grandfather shepherding all kinds of nachas today. Thank you all for standing before us and honoring your grandfather. We will now hear from the Honorable Judge Robert Michael Dow, Jr.
Good morning. Good morning. It is almost impossible to comprehend that less than a month ago, in the hallowed halls of the Supreme Court of the United States, Judge Flaum received the Edward J. Devitt Distinguished Service to Justice Award. For those of you who are not familiar with the Devitt Award, it honors an Article III judge who has achieved a distinguished career and made significant contributions to the administration of justice and the advancement of the rule of law. There have only been 40 Devitt Awards ever. For federal judges, it is the Heisman, Oscar, and Nobel Prize all rolled into one. It's the highest honor in our branch of government. In this age of modern technology, I would encourage you, not now of course, to Google Flaum and Devitt Award. One of the items that will appear on your phone or computer screen is a marvelous photo of Judge Flaum, flanked on one side by his dear friend and former colleague, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, and the other side by Chief Justice Roberts. It's a great photo of them all. The judge, in his dark suit, handsome as ever, though grayer and a bit shorter than he was in the baby judge days. But the judge looks really happy, as he should. You can see that in the photo. What you can't see in the photo is that his entire family, Delilah, John, Allie, Paul, and all the grandchildren were looking on. Some of his clerks and dear friends of more than 50 years were there too. But if you take a very close look at the photo, you can also detect at least a tiny bit of discomfort on the judge's smile. You see, he never liked to be the center of attention, and in that moment, he surely was. That will be my treasured photo of the judge because it captures his greatness, both as one of the finest judges our nation has ever had, and even more so, his greatness as a human being, because even in that moment of professional triumph, his humility shined through. To my mind, and I think to the judges too, humility is the most attractive quality in a human being. I think it is also an essential quality in a good judge. Judges can never know the cases they are called upon to decide, as well as the lawyers and the parties who appear before them. And our Constitution and laws imbue judges with enormous power over the life, liberty, and property of individuals and corporations. Behind every case are people, just like us. Many of them are terrified, and all of them are looking for and deserve a fair shake, their day in court, and equal justice under law. Judge Flaum understood these fundamentals better than any person I have ever known. Before he went on the bench, Judge Flaum was a very distinguished lawyer, a very accomplished lawyer. He briefed, argued, and won an important case in the Supreme Court of the United States at the age of 33. Had he sought a career in the private sector, firms across the country would have vied for the services of an experienced appellate lawyer with multiple Supreme Court arguments under his bench by the time he was old enough to be president. But as the judge always said, public service is the highest calling, so he never left the government. As an opinion writer, Judge Flaum was a master craftsman, but he was also a very creative and practical judge who never forgot his roots as a line prosecutor and later a district judge. No one ever left his courtroom feeling unheard or unfairly treated. His opinions often provided helpful guidance for lower court judges struggling to translate the majesty of the law into concrete rulings that meet the challenges of any given case. He also was an incredibly patient boss and gifted teacher. As a mentor to judges, he was without peer. I would venture to guess that most, if not all, of the judges present here this morning, and there are many, many, many of us as I look around this room, virtually all of us would identify Judge Flaum as one of our mentors. His role as court consigliere was legendary. So how did Judge Flaum come to that position? Well, it's because you'll never meet a more genuine person, someone who truly, deeply cared about everyone he met. I've never known anyone more comfortable in his own skin than Judge Flaum. What you saw is what you got. He was the ultimate team player, always striving for the good of the whole and never looking for the spotlight to shine on him. In the poem If, Kipling praised the person who, as John said, could walk with kings yet keep the common touch. That was the judge. He knew the name of every person in the Dirksen building. That's one of the first things you observe if you're one of his law clerks and you're tailing behind him to head off to lunch or anywhere else you were going in town. He knew everybody, literally everybody. I always urged new Flaum clerks to watch everything the judge did, literally everything, from where he added the commas to your drafts to how he treated everyone in the building with dignity, with respect, and with a warm smile. And especially pay attention to all the ways in which he made time to connect with everyone, from the person who cleans his office to the chief circuit judge. No one was more generous with their time, energy, and accumulated wisdom than Judge Flaum. Where did all of this wisdom and decency come from? For Judge Flaum, it all started with family. The judge often spoke of his father, who had passed by the time I clerked, with great reverence and affection and great respect for all the lessons of life that he took from his father. And at the end of every workday, the judge placed 2 phone calls. One was to his mother, Sally, who lived by herself well into her 90s in upstate New York. And the other was to his beloved Delilah to let her know what time he'd swing by Mayor Brown to pick her up on the way home. His chambers, of course, was filled with mementos of family life. I do think it is the Flaum Grandchildren Hall of Fame. Photos of the boy judge as a Little League coach. You may have forgotten those photos and looking at all the photos of your children, but they're there still too, I'm sure. And later photos of the grandchildren. I don't think he knew how his phone worked or that the phone could take a picture or a video until his grandkids started playing hockey. And then some miraculous way he learned all that power that was in his phone. And every time you saw him after that, he would pull his phone out and say, hey, you want to see a video of Eli? And there would be this little pipsqueak going up the ice, carrying the puck, and no checking in those days. But it was a wonderful tribute, as his grandchildren said, to what a central part in his life they became. Of course, we clerks were family too. Chambers was fun. To be sure, we did get our work done, but there were a lot of lighthearted moments, particularly at the end of the day, when we would gather for what the judge called kibitzing. As clerks, our opinions mattered. Dissent was tolerated, it was even encouraged. He always said, you each have 1 vote and I have 4. He understood by that subjecting his views to constant probing and testing, that he would produce opinions that withstood scrutiny and saw around corners. But he also knew whose name was on the commission, and thus who bore the ultimate responsibility for the weighty decisions that he and his colleagues made every day. I'm confident that my fellow clerks and judges would unanimously agree that Judge Flaum is as wise and thoughtful a person as we have ever met. Perhaps the best way to summarize my own personal respect and affection for the judge is to say that before I clerked for him, I had no desire whatsoever to be a judge. The thought never had crossed my mind. But after I clerked for him, there was no other job I really wanted, because I wanted to be like him. Judge Flaum leaves behind an incredible legacy, a beautiful family, a legion of admirers in the community. A few weeks ago, his daughter Allie mentioned to me that the judge's family also found joy in the opportunity over the past few years to take care of him as his physical ailments compounded. After decades of the judge being the anchor for all of them, they had an opportunity to give something back from him. The apples did not fall far from the tree. An extraordinarily well-lived life, Judge Flaum shaped the world around him for the better. Most of the time, he did this with a hidden hand. Often working behind the scenes, as he preferred, he lifted up all those around him, picking them up when they were down, and inspiring them to be the very best versions of themselves. It all seemed effortless. It truly was his gift. But that is because he had endless reserves of energy, grace, humility, and always the courage to do the right thing. We will miss him beyond measure.
Thank you, Judge Dow. So many beautiful words. I thought I would offer a lesson from our tradition in Judge Flaum's memory. He appreciated the Jewish tradition, so I would like to believe that he would appreciate this as well. The rabbis imagine a scene as the children of Israel are wandering through the desert. At the head of this long procession are two sacred arks. One contained the laws that Moses received at Sinai. In the other aron, in the other ark, were the bones of Joseph, whose dying wish was to be taken with the people when God would fulfill the divine promise and take the people out of Israel, out of Egypt. According to the rabbis, when people along the way would ask what was in those two containers, Moses would say, "In this one are the laws and teachings of God." Then pointing to the other ark, he would say, "And this one contains the person who fulfilled them." Behind me is the Holy Ark. It contains the scrolls of the Torah. Here, contained in this box, is a man who fulfilled the spirit of Torah. In the Torah, we are taught kibud av va'em, honor your father and your mother. This man fulfilled that commandment. Judge Flaum started working when he was 5 or 6 years old, sometimes riding in his father Lewis's bread truck. And from his father, the judge learned the value of hard work. Lewis worked long days, but he also learned lessons about justice and righteousness from him as well. As a boy, he noticed that his father did not always take money from the people he delivered bread to. He began to understand that they couldn't afford it. So he watched his father give them bread, always careful to protect their dignity by saying he would put it on their tab. Of course, his father never did. And as you heard from the eulogies already given, Judge Flaum learned those lessons well, and he put them into practice. All during college, the judge came home every weekend to work in his parents' grocery store, every weekend. And when his parents gave him the responsibility to look out for his beloved sister Ellen, he did that as well till her dying day. From his parents, Judge Flaum learned the seminal importance of family And he never forgot that lesson, as you've heard so eloquently said. He made family his priority. No matter what bumps occurred along life's path, he maintained those ties. It is good to know that he and Thea were able to build a strong friendship over the years. There were other harder lessons that the judge learned growing up in Hudson, New York. The pagan prophet spoke of the people of Israel as a Am Yashva Badad, as a people that dwells alone. In time, the otherness of Jews became a source of anti-Semitism. Judge Flaum witnessed that as well in his life, most especially when swastikas were painted on his parents' grocery windows. Judge Flaum was a deeply proud and identified Jew. He understood the importance of the state of Israel for the Jewish people and was proud of its accomplishments. But rather than turning inward and rejecting the promise of America, Judge Flaum did the exact opposite. He devoted his life to public service in a quest to make this country better, to make this country more just, to work through word and deed to help keep the promise of America. And Judge Flaum understood his responsibilities as an American and served in the Naval Reserves, the United States Navy Reserve Judge Advocate General's Corps, as a lieutenant commander, hence the flag on his coffin. This one fulfilled that which is in the ark. And one of the best known teachings of the Torah is V'ahavta l'reacha chamocha, which is often translated as love your neighbor as yourself, but a more accurate translation would be love your neighbor because he is like you. Judge Flaum treated everyone with the respect they deserve, no matter your station in life. He treated everyone the same. He made a point of remembering everyone's names and taking the time to get to know them. Judge Flaum was legendary in this way, and if he detected any respect in his courtroom, you might hear him say, "I am disappointed." Worse yet, "I am saddened by counsel." That was all one needed to hear from a man who expected others to treat each other with respect, to adhere to those ancient words from the Torah just as he did. Vishinantam levanecha, and you will teach your children. The judge loved being a father. He was there for his children in every way, from a little league coach to a role model. Allie speaks of her father's big heart, ever aware of the way that his face would light up when she came into the room. And he was the father who always picked up the phone no matter what. Speaking of phone calls, he was great at keeping in touch with his kids, especially when they were in college. And if they didn't pick up the phone in the dorm room, then he would speak to the roommates. For long periods of time, probably secretly hoping that his children would come home to the dorm room at some point. He was, as we've heard, a remarkable grandfather. I don't know any grandparents who do not enjoy their grandchildren, but I have never met anyone who enjoyed being a grandfather more than this man. Lucy, you told a story when we met of how your grandfather gave you a copy of the Constitution. And you found it so interesting that you keep the Constitution on your night table. Now, I don't know many people your age that keep the Constitution next to their bed. But then again, I don't know many people who had a grandfather like yours. I love the story that Lionel, that you told, about a bet that your grandfather made as a young boy. He bet on the Giants to win in a game when Bobby Thompson hit a home run called the shot heard around the world. He had won his $5 bet, but the boy didn't want to pay. Judge Flaum was so incensed by the injustice, he went to the house and he threw stones at the boy's window until eventually a $5 bill came floating down. Justice had been done. When we stood at this spot just a few days ago, last Shabbat, we read one of the most romantic stories in the entire Torah. Actually, it's the only romantic story in the Torah. When Jacob met Rachel for the first time, the Torah records that he was so overcome by love for her that he kissed her and he cried. Joel loved Delilah with that type of love, and she him. They were always in sync. They could speak about deep topics, the news, or a point of law, and their love and respect for one another was always evident. Delilah loved his humor as well. They traveled together, they antiqued together, they lived life together. And in the last days, she sat with him as he dictated his obituary, wordsmithing together and planning every aspect, every detail of this funeral. They were the loves of each other's lives. Finally, the Torah understands that in order to create a society worthy of God's presence, judges are the pillars of that society. They are the very foundation stones upon which it rests. Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha. You will appoint judges and officials for your tribes, it says in the book of Deuteronomy, in all the settlements that your God is giving you, and they shall govern the people with due justice. You shall not judge unfairly. You shall show no partiality. This man fulfilled that ideal. And then the Torah offers the words that are well known to all of us. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. Justice, O justice, will you pursue. And the rabbis ask, why does the word justice have to be repeated? And their answer speaks directly to this man. One must use just means to derive true justice. Those words were also emblematic of this man. Every judge in attendance today knows that to be true, as do those who stood before him in judgment, and the lawyers as well. It is good to know that in the final weeks of his life, Judge Flaum was able to go to the Supreme Court to receive the Edward G. Devitt Distinguished Service to Justice Award. On that night, Chief Justice Roberts mentioned to Delilah that he had never been to an event where more wonderful things were said about one person. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. Justice, O justice, will you pursue. Long ago, the rabbis envisioned the people of Israel walking with two arks in the lead. Moses' words speak to this day to this man, this one who fulfilled the spirit of that which is in that one. As the psalmist said, Osa ella lo yimot le'olam. Whoever does these things will stand firm forever. May God rest the soul of Judge Joel Flaum, and may he rest b'shalom. May he rest in peace. And to that we can all say Amen. We rise now for the memorial prayer.
שוכן במרומים, המסר מלוכה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה. במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע. את נשמת ירוחם בן לבן ושרה שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו. בעל הרחמים, הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים. ותרור בתרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו. ונאמר
El Malei Rachamim, O God, you are full of compassion, you who dwell on Most High. We ask that you grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of your presence. Among the holy and the pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament, unto the soul of the man known as the Honorable Joel M. Flaum, known to close friends and family as Joel, known to colleagues and to country as the Honorable Judge Flaum, and known to the precious few as family, as husband, as father, and as grandfather. Lord of mercy, bring Judge Flaum under the cover of your wings, and let his soul be bound in the bond of eternal life. Be God's possession, and may he rest b'shalom, may he rest in peace. And to that we can all say, Amen. You may be seated.
Let us rise.
יושב בסתר עליון, בצל שדי יתלונן. אומר על אדוני מחסי ומסודתי, אלוהי יבטחו, כי הוא יצילך מפח יקדוש, מדבר חבוט. בעברתו יסך לך, ותחת כנפיו תחסה, צינה וסוחרה מיתו. לא תירא מפחד לילה, מחץ יעוף יומם, מדבר באופל יעלוך, מכתב ישוט צהריים. מכל מצדך אלך, ולבא ממך, אליך לא ייגע. רק בעיניך תביט בשילומת ושעים תראה, כי אתה אדוני נפשי, עליון שמת ימיך. לא ירנן